I love tabletop RPGs, and one of the things I love most about them is the sheer variety of themes and stories you can tell with these games. I mean, you got your standard fantasy games like Dungeons & Dragons, but you also got your not-so-standard fantasy games like The Wild Sea, or the effortlessly cool crime thriller Blades in the Dark, or maybe even the blood-pumping horror of the heart, and sometimes even your favorite media properties like Avatar: The Last Airbender. No matter what game I'm GMing, I want my players to have a good time. I don't want to invite my friends over for an adventure only to end up making them uncomfortable. So to preempt these kind of problems from coming up, I use safety tools. Now before you judge too quickly, no one's getting strapped down with leather here, alright? Safety tools are just simply a way to avoid uncomfortable feelings at the table or deal with them when they come up. It's important to use these tools and have these conversations before a game starts so that you can avoid any awkward moments at the table.
As Vex is saying this, Tiberius is getting a half chub.
A what?
Alright, let's talk about cats. But sadly, not these kinds of cats. It stands for concepts, aim, tone, and subject matter. It's simply a conversation you have with your players before the game starts, so everyone's kind of on the same place. I like to focus on the tone part. At your session 0, before everyone even thinks about making characters, just have a conversation about the tone of your game with your players. Do you want something that's dark and dramatic like Game of Thrones, or do you want something a little lighter and funny, maybe like a Saturday morning cartoon? I find it helpful to write down a list of other games, movies, TV shows, even music that I think kind of fits the tone and theme of the game, just so everyone's on the same page. One of the most common safety tools is lines and veils. Before you start playing, just ask your players for a list of topics that maybe make them uncomfortable or things they just don't want to see in their game. A line is something that should not come up at all, not even mentioned. A veil is something that could be mentioned, but just not focused on. Not a big part of the story. Personal veil of mine is romance, right? I just don't feel comfortable flirting as a fictional character with my friend who's also playing a fictional character. I don't know, the whole thing just kind of feels weird to me, but I know romance can be a really important and interesting part of some stories. It's just not a thing I want to act out, so I'm fine with it being there, I just don't want to do it. We just don't go into detail. The game Wild Sea takes the concept of lines even further. If someone checks off something as a line, then you can just assume that it doesn't exist in the world at all, right? No one's ever heard of it, no one's ever done it, it just doesn't exist. So if a player checks off something like racism, right, you can just assume that racism does not exist. No one's ever done it, no one's ever heard of it, there just is no racism, wouldn't that be great? Yeah, let's check off a few more, like homophobia, fascism, frogs. Now we got perfect world, right? I recommend just making a big list of potentially taboo topics or things that might make someone uncomfortable, and just give it to your players and let them check off what is a line, what's a veil, and encourage them to add more to the list. But what do you do if your players don't want to just give everyone a big list of things that make them uncomfortable, or something happens mid-game that triggers them? Well, that's where the X card comes in. Before each session starts, just hand all your players an index card or a sheet of paper with a big X on it. If at any point someone takes their X card and puts it in the middle of the table, just stop. Skip whatever current scene you're on and maybe replace it with something else. It's like one of those improv games on TikTok you see. And very importantly, whoever played their X card is under no obligation whatsoever to explain why something made them feel uncomfortable. And this isn't just a tool for players. As a GM, if one of your players makes you feel uncomfortable, feel free to use your X card. All these safety tools are meant to go both ways. Ultimately, there's so many different ways to play tabletop RPGs, and every story your group tells is going to be uniquely incredible. And these safety tools aren't meant to suck the fun out of these games. They're meant to make everyone feel comfortable and confident while they're playing. And if your players are more comfortable, they're going to tell better stories. Alright? Thanks.